So, Michelle, question of the day for you. When
Oh
you
boy.
first started your business, how long did it take you to really think of yourself as a business owner?
Funnily enough, yes, I was just at a Chamber of Commerce thing this morning for owners of the business, and it actually finally it took a while. Definitely took a few years, and I think because we sit here at our desks talking to ourselves a lot, we don't consider ourselves as CEO C-suite. But yeah, maybe 17 years in, it finally feels that way.
Well, I think that most of us relate to that. It takes a while to switch those hats or to blend them. And so I'm super excited about our guest today because he's going to talk about his own really interesting journey as well as some really smart advice around topics that our audience is going to enjoy.
You know it. Yes. So, welcome to That Solo Life. I am Michelle Kane with Voice Matters, and this is the podcast for micro agency and solo owners who are building things for themselves. People like our guest today, Jake Isham, and he is the owner, founder. He's a filmmaker, he's a photographer, and his company is Creative Minds. Welcome, Jake. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you describe yourself as an accidental marketer, which I know sometimes we all kind of feel that way, even if we studied it. But, someone who went to film school, building a creative agency. Walk us through how you went from, focusing fully on your storytelling and filmmaking to, oh, hey, now I run a business.
Again, I mean, just like you said in the intro, it was definitely not an overnight thing. So yeah, went to film school, even did a semester of grad school and realized I was just going to spend 2.5 years what I just spent 4 years doing. So I was like, okay,
yeah,
I just spent 4 years doing this. I don't need to do this. Which left me in a very interesting kind of situation. I was kind of like, okay, what do I do next? And, I'm very fortunate that both my parents are artists, where the idea of like, go get a job was never really in their vocabulary, which is a massive pro, but also kind of an interesting con, because it was very much, okay, you want to direct films? Well, go figure it out. Go. I'm like, huh. And so I personally struggled always to find a mentor. I never had a mentor, and I've had, you could say, mentors a little bit. Like my father is definitely, like, I've taken bits of wisdom from people, but I'm not like,
sure,
how to mentor. So it's very much been
right.
an interesting journey of trying to figure it out myself. And where again, I was kind of like scraping by for work and doing kind of anything. My father's advice kind of post school and into this was based off of his own journey, which he came up as a trumpet player, and he would take any job that kept a trumpet in his hand. So he would play Chinese funerals in the streets of San Francisco. He would play in the orchestra. He would play in the Holiday Inn band, on Friday nights. Anything that got him a paycheck that kept a trumpet in his hand, compared to a buddy of his who drove a cab during the day and would only play jazz music at night. He's like, I'm a jazz musician. I only play jazz, which neither is right nor wrong.
Right.
It was just the career my dad had. He attributed it tremendously to being able to get basically paid to practice.
Yeah.
And so it was that was a core lesson of mine early on, which was just like, keep a camera in my hand. And just kind of, it led to more freelancing. And then I looked at the individuals that I really admired who were not starving artists and who were able to escape it, who kind of escaped that net and that trap. And so many of them had the mindset of entrepreneurship and were business owners. And that's when I kind of went, I kind of need to start an agency. And then thus at like 25, I had to basically now teach myself business, which I had never learned before.
Right. I love your dad's mindset. keep a trumpet in my hand. That's fabulous. And just to sidetrack a tiny bit, even when you started, even though of course, clearly you started in the era of, everyone's online and social media. I don't know. Recently, I've noticed on Threads, Spike Lee is out there openly contacting young creatives willing to give them his time. And I'm thinking, can we go back?
All the time. I mean, Timbaland, the musician, legendary producer, is on live stream taking up young artists and critiquing songs and making beats on live. Like, it's a fascinating space we're in now. Like you have, right now, especially in the film industry, like you can just make things. And right now it's, the two trending things are the movies Obsession and Backrooms, both made by, Curry Baker, who's 25, 26 years old, and Kane Parsons, who's 20 years old. Both movies have grossed over $150 million. And both started off just making videos on YouTube.
Fabulous.
And then they got but then they just, again,
just doing
to
it.
practice. They were making brand deals, they were making videos online, but they just put in the work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that. Talking about your lens, which is, unique, and it really is a differentiator for you. You are a filmmaker, and, you use those filmmaker and storyteller instincts in your marketing. These days, everybody claims to tell a story, but, it's the thing, tell a story. Some do not. But I'd love to know how your unique lens, how does that change the work you do for clients?
I guess I have two parts to that answer. One was just on the storytelling itself, which is I look at storytelling in two perspectives, because you have one, which is, you could say, the obvious, like, oh, tell a story. Well, when I was, the story of my dad that I was just telling you about playing trumpet, right? That's a story, which is, I think, a lot of the storytelling aspect gets muddled up between that concept and the ability to tell a story, which is beginning, middle, and end. Conflict resolution, build up, set up, payoff, right? Like that's an art of storytelling and brand building. Is you look at, there's a very famous story, I don't know what you would call him, but he basically wrote the book of breaking down storytelling. His name is Joseph Campbell, and he talks about what's called the hero's journey. And so it's all of these steps that a hero goes through. Came from the Odyssey, and Homer writing the Iliad and the Odyssey. And it is kind of, you could say, the Bible for every epic movie that we've ever seen and every epic story. Star Wars to Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, like it's all the same formula, and it's based off of the hero's journey. And so one of the things when, you're building that personal brand, it's understanding those elements. Who is your enemy? Who are your allies? What are you standing up for? What are you standing against? Like it's all of those elements, not just, hey, when I was a kid, back in 1993, blah, 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 blah. Like, and so I think that's that aspect of storytelling that is not overtly spoken about or thought about as much.
Right. So true.
That's the long-winded thing that I wanted just to say about, which did not answer your question in the slightest.
It's okay.
But I think what my unique, lens is partially that mentality, is that I come from, for lack of sounding pretentious and precocious, legit storytelling, right? Like I'm not a marketer. I'm a filmmaker. These posters here are my movies, right? I've put movies out into film festivals. I've won awards, and I bring that mentality rather than, okay, great, let's just, sell your product and, let's get it out there. And when I work with entrepreneurs, because I do a lot of personal brand building, is I think the additional kind of selling point I have is that ability to make them comfortable on camera. Because a lot of the entrepreneurs I work with are not, I have 1 million followers and they're Gary Vee and they're, they've been doing this for, 15 years and they speak in front of 20,000 people like it's nothing. These are guys who you put a camera on them and they're like,
Yeah.
They're like, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to say. They go full Ricky Bobby, and we're like, I don't know what to do with my hands. And I have ability as a director. And I think that's where that skill of having made movies, having worked with lots of actors to make them comfortable in front of camera, that they do know what to say. And because one of my, you could say, biggest wins is when I work with clients, their first shoots are usually about like 4-ish hours. To then I worked with a client who we've done now our 4th shoot together. I just shot with him yesterday. We did it in an hour. We got more content in 1 hour than we first did in 4 hours.
Yeah.
And that's just by getting him comfortable in front of camera and knowing what to say, knowing how to say it. And that first shoot we did was with a teleprompter, and it took 4 hours. And this first time, now we did in 1 hour with no teleprompter, off the top of the head, and he crushed it.
Yeah. And honestly, that's a talent that you also bring to your podcast, right? And you're sort of developing a signature model for this, right? Where the format itself becomes part of the brand story. You're out on the golf course, you're in their house of worship. You know, how did you get to that? What was your thinking behind that? And what type of client is that right for? Is it right for everyone?
Yeah. So when we shoot podcasts for clients, there's obviously 2 obvious ways to do it. One, like this, which is a remote podcast. And then you have the in-studio podcast. And I was like, okay, everyone's doing that. How can I make a fun, unique way of doing this that's filmmakery? That's very, that's beholden to us and my company, and like that mentality that I try to bring to my agency. And we basically came up with this, kind of signature series model, which is, let's take a hobby or an interest of yours and let's create this series where it's a talk show. It is a podcast, but it's out in the world, and it's out doing something you love in an environment that you enjoy, and allowing you to have that interview, have that conversation, but not just sitting at a studio or sitting via Zoom. And so who is it right for? That was your second follow-up question to into that.
No, it's okay. It's all right.
To an entrepreneur who is really focusing on building their personal brand, wanting to use this to leverage relationships. I'm a big proponent of podcasting as a great networking tool. I think it is one of the best, most underutilized networking tool. People think about like podcasts primarily, obviously the long form, but like so many people are leveraging it for the clips, right? Let me get on podcast so I get all the clips for social, which is great. But that's first and foremost if you're doing an entertainment podcast. This is a business podcast, right? This is to help grow your business. But because of this podcast, the 3 of us can network. We can help each other with business. I was on a podcast, for example, a couple months ago. The host and I kicked it off really cool. And we talked after, and I was like, well, you have a coaching program. Well, if you ever need me, I'm more than happy to speak to your guys totally free. That went great. And then he invited me to actually speak at his mastermind. And now, he's an affiliate of mine and pushing customers to me. And it's this, but that all came from a simple podcast.
Yeah. That's great.
I mean, the thread that keeps coming through, and I'm glad that you set the table with the story about your dad and the trumpet, that's really going to stick with me, is, the lesson that I took from that story is that when you stay really focused on what lights you up, on your passion, then you build the world around that, rather than sometimes what we do is we dim our light and we try to fit into a mold. You haven't done that either. You have made sure to keep your passion the core, the thing that lights you up, which means work never feels old. And so everything that you do, every thread is centered around what really drives you, including your podcast method and what you're pulling out of guests. You're showing them how they can leverage those things that light them up, their hobbies, the things that really bring them joy, and leverage that and build business around that. So I love that focus and that internal compass that you have. I think a lot of our audience will be able to relate to that because, communicators and creatives, we're not monoliths. A lot of our communications people, do these interesting and diverse things, everything from, bodybuilding to, teaching yoga to, mindfulness coaching. It's everywhere, to teaching. They're a group that, uses all of those skill sets in their practice. So I think that this is a way for you to also pay it forward to those entrepreneurs coming up behind you, to see that it's not a box. You don't have to do it like everyone else. But if you keep this thing in mind as your North Star, that's going to make it a lot easier. So I'm so glad that you shared that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's taken, to be honest, a lot of work, because it was no. It seems so easy, and I've said, yeah, okay, great, yeah, but the amount of internal strife, mental angst that I've gone through over the last decade, and I still, there are still parts that I go through that, days that I'm like, this sucks, and that I've never, I've not always had the North Star. I go back to it. Sometimes I lose the light a little bit, and I'm like going this direction, and I'm like, okay, wait, hold on, I got to come back, focus again, and because one of the hardest lessons, and it's the second lesson to that story, if I may add to it, which is the hardest lesson, because I didn't do that for my 20s, which was, while taking any job, he'd get enough money to pay the bills, to, make sure that there's food on the table. And then he would go work on his creative projects on the side.
Yeah.
And then have that fund all of his creative projects. Right.
Yeah.
And till he got a record deal. And it was something that I didn't really focus on. And I'm now in my 30s, really more working on, okay, great. Hey, I need to actually, the business is one thing, the career is another thing. And really need to make sure that I do prioritize both. And I've, gave up the security of a 9 to 5 and going, okay, great. I know I can just clock in at 9 a.m. and leave at 6 p.m. And then I can go work on my art for freedoms, right? So I have to basically hunt for everything I eat, in a sense. I have to go out, promote, and then sell it, close it, deliver it. But I have no cap. I have no ceiling. So I gave up the security of that, but to not forget, if the real passion is this, still go for that. Don't lose that North Star. So that's something that, as I've gone into my 30s, that's what I've been making sure to keep.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, and as you said at the outset, right, you've built your whole career on having to just figure it out, which is fantastic. So, for our listeners, who are maybe thinking of stepping out or have just stepped out, they might be earlier in their journey, still finding their footing. They haven't quite made the identity shift. What's one thing you wish someone had told you at the start that might have saved you a lot of time and or the anguish, even though sometimes the anguish is necessary?
Promote. If there is one thing to really figure out, but the degree of promotion that it takes to be successful, like, it is so understated. And you don't know until you know. If you don't have that mentor, because again, I never worked at an agency. I've literally always had to just, unfortunately, figure it out. And I've been like, well, should I go get a job and just so I can learn it and mentor? And then I'm like, I'm 28. Why do I want to do that? Or I'm 30. Why do I want to do that? Or 33. I'm like, no, okay. And then I go, well, maybe I should have. Okay, well, it's a little too late now. And then I'm like, 2 years later, well, it's a little too late now. I'm like, all right. So, but just to there's a mentor, because I found a lot of mentors via YouTube, right? Successful business owners who are, that do podcasts, that have YouTube channels. And I've been very fortunate in this age to, that we're in an era that people give a lot of information that's really successful. And there was a gentleman that I was watching, and he gives this great example of him learning a similar lesson. he was in the gym space and he, put out 300 flyers to promote his gym and to get new people. And then he went, because he, heard that's how you promote for a gym. You go out, pass out flyers, and he posted 300. He then went to a mentor and he said, okay, I did it. I did 300 flyers. Or the mentor was like, how many you did it? He said 300. And he says, oh, well, that's why. He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, I do 5,000 a day. He said, you did 300. I do 5,000 every single day. And that, he's like, and so it really goes to show, it's like what you're doing for promotion is not wrong. Whatever the promote, like cold email, social media, cold calling, whatever marketing you're doing, it's not wrong. You're probably just not doing it the volume that's nearly sufficient enough.
Right.
And that's been one of the hardest lessons that I've had to learn. And every time it's very interesting because it constantly happens, unfortunately. And I'm actually working with my team to continue to happen this. Like, basically, I've noticed that there's a 6-week lag. So you do promotion.
Yeah.
And then the income is about 6 weeks. And it's pretty consistently 6 weeks after. So, and again, this is just what I've seen to be very true. And so you do promotion, don't worry about it, but like judge it from week 6 to week 12. That's when you can judge your promotion. Don't judge it for the first 6 weeks, but you got to be going hard for 6 weeks. And that's, again, being patient, being willing to be consistent. So like the overall lesson beyond that is just consistency is the key.
So
as
true.
an artist, it's the hardest for me because I just want to create. I want to do the next thing. People call it ADD, ADHD. I disagree with that personally because it's just being an artist. That's what artists do. There's nothing mentally wrong with that. It's just being an artist. And it's being creative. And as an entrepreneur, you are an artist. You're literally creating something that was never there before. A business, a product, a service. It didn't exist until you put it there. You're an artist. That's a whole nother rant that I can get into.
Yeah. But I think that business development lesson, it's one that we talk about a lot, but you frame it in a way that everybody should take this lesson. It's the consistency, but it's doing so much more than you think is necessary because people will be consistent, but they're doing what feels like a lot because they're not comfortable doing business development, but it's really not enough. So amp it up like times 20 and you're getting closer. I think that's something that has to be said. And we see people that are putting themselves out there and they're consistent and they're telling stories and they're sharing reels and they're doing things and you see them all the time and it feels like a lot to you and it feels like they have a superpower. They don't. They just know that volume matters. Like it's not just the consistency, it's volume. Now, obviously, you got to have the quality and the stuff to back it up. But I also like that you look at the data, but you measure it when you know you're supposed to. Because you're right. You can't do something for like 4 weeks and then think, okay, that didn't work. I'm just going to go sit at my desk and, talk to my friends and, hope that they refer me business.
Or
that's
try
not
something
how it
new.
works.
Okay, great. It didn't work. I posted on social media for 4 weeks. It didn't work. Well, first of all, how many posts did you do?
Yeah.
Like, it was interesting when I started posting again, I did an experiment. I posted on social media. I was posting 3 times a day on multiple channels.
Yeah.
Like 3 different videos every single day. And then again, 6 weeks later, the income jumps up. Like it is literally, but like, again, I'm posting 3 times a day. So right now I'm working on how do I post up to 6 times a day across multiple. Granted, I have my photography, I have my filmmaking, I have my marketing channel, so I can post a bit more. But like, great, how can you do just so much volume? And once you do enough volume, the quality gets there. And it's something that you need to like, I always look at like 1% better. So just to give a quick example, if I may, like so I started a new show with a buddy of mine. We talk about filmmaking, news in the filmmaking space and gear, etc. Because we just, shooting the shit one day. And
is that the name of it?
called the Creative Lens. So if there's any filmmaking nerds out there,
I like
photographer
shooting the
nerds
shit,
out
though.
there.
That's good. That could be for your next podcast, shooting the shit.
Exactly. And but if you remember from the pre-interview, probably my setup looked nothing like this. If you look at the first episode, we've done, I think, 8 or 9 episodes so far at the time of this recording right now. And if you look at the first episode, his setup looks legit. It looks awesome. Mine looks horrible. Like I'm in a white room. I'm like, it looks not interesting. And then if you look at it, like just a frame from each episode over the next 8 episodes, you go, wow, 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 wow. And so I'm a big proponent of like, what's one thing you can do to make it look a little better, to make it a little bit more professional, to make it a little more interesting for the audience. Like it doesn't need to be, okay, we need to jump to 10. No, it's the same thing like working out. You're not going to throw, 100 more pounds on whatever weight you're doing. You go, let me do 5 more pounds at the gym for my, bench press. Then let me put another 5 pounds. So eventually you are at 100 pounds more, but it really just takes the discipline of, let me just get a little better.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great note to leave with our listeners. Wow.
Yeah. For sure. So how can our listeners connect with you? Do you prefer LinkedIn? Hit us up. Tell us where they can find you online.
Totally. LinkedIn is great. Just search my name. Instagram, Jake Creative Marketing on Instagram, LinkedIn. Otherwise, you can kind of Google my name. You'll see my photography, my filmmaking, my agency stuff. Otherwise, creativemindsofficial.com. More than happy to help. Just, always reach out.
And don't worry, listeners, we will, of course, have all this in the show notes for you, as always, so that you can connect with Jake. And we know for a fact that we have filmmakers in our audience. So we have photographers in our audience. And so I know that this is probably really good for you, that you're really excited about this. I know somebody specifically that went to my alma mater and went to film school there. So this one's for you. So, yeah.
And we thank you so much for being here, Jake. And to our listeners, thanks for listening. If you got something out of this, and of course you did, please share it around. Hit us up at soloprpro.com. And of course, our podcasts are all available at thatsololife.com. And until next time, thanks for listening.